Hi guys, welcome to Code Bashers. In this video, we will be discussing about the access modifiers in OOPS. Guys, this is part 2 of my OOPS interview series. In previous video, we discussed about the 4 pillars of object-oriented programming. So make sure that you watch that video also. Guys, if you're new to this channel, make sure that you subscribe it. And guys, please join my Telegram group also. I post regular updates on different companies which are hiring. So guys, now let's start this video. And before starting the video, please hit the like button as well as subscribe button for this channel. Okay. So guys, in this video, I will be discussing that what are the access modifiers, why do we need them, what are the types of access modifiers. There are basically 4 types of access modifiers. One is public, private, protected and default. I will be discussing all these access modifiers in detail, and with the help of the code, I will be explaining you. So guys, make sure that you watch this video till the end so that you can get to know the entire process about the access modifiers. Okay, so access modifiers. So first of all, access modifiers, or you can say access specifiers in a class, are used to assign the accessibility modes to the class members. It includes data members as well as the member functions. Now, that is, it sets some restrictions on the class members not to get directly accessed by the outside functions. See, majorly there are 3 types of access modifiers, as you can see here, that is private, protected and public. We will discuss in detail about these access specifiers, but these access specifiers put some restrictions on the data, that how it can be accessed, which data can be accessed by which mode, by which variables, or you can say by which functions. So all these restrictions are given to a particular data member, or you can say a particular class members, by these access specifiers. So I hope this thing is clear to you. Now the first access specifiers that we will be discussing in this video is public access specifiers. Now all the class members, whether it is data member or the member functions declared under the public specifier, will be available to everyone. The data members and member functions declared as public can be accessed by other classes and other functions too with the help of the objects. So the members which are declared as public can be accessed in the entire program, whether it is in some other function, whether it is in some other class, whether it is in main function or in any function of a class. So it can be used anywhere inside the program using the concept of objects. Now public members can be called or used anywhere inside the entire program, as I have told you. Now public members can be called directly using objects. So we just need to declare the object of a particular class, and by using that object we can simply call every member function that is present in that particular class anywhere in the program. So let's just see this particular thing with the help of an example. So see, here we have a class demo. Here we have a public access specifier, and under this public access specifier there are 2 things. First is int radius, which is the data member. Another one is the float area, that is the member function. Both of these are public, so it means that it can be accessed in the entire program by using with the help of the objects. Now what we'll do, in the main function we will first create the object of this particular class. So demo d. So this is how our object is created. Now see, now we can simply call these functions with the help of this object. So d dot radius. Now since radius is the data member, so we can assign any value to this particular radius. So let's suppose I have assigned the value as 3. So since the d dot radius, that is the radius variable for this particular object, has been assigned 3, so now we have to find the area. So what we'll do, we'll simply do cout, and now we will call d dot area. Now see, in this particular line, that d dot radius is equal to 3, this particular radius variable has been given the value as 3. Now when we'll plot the area using d dot area, so what we'll get, we will get 3.14 into 3 into 3. So let's just run this code. Okay, so let's just run this code first, and we will get the area based on the radius value as 3. Now earlier, when we have not assigned this value as 3, it was by default 0. So guys, this I am explaining with the help of C++, but you just need to understand the concept. Okay, so our area is coming out to 28.26. So when our radius was 3, we were simply able to get our area as 28.6. So I hope this public access specifier is clear to you. We can simply call every data member or member functions which is defined as public with the help of the object anywhere at any part of the function, or you can say any part of the code. So I hope now public access specifier is clear to you. Now the next access specifier is the private access specifier. Guys, this is way opposite to the public access specifier. So in this particular access specifier, the class members declared as private can be accessed only by the member functions inside the class. They are not allowed to be accessed directly by any object or functions outside the class. See, we have just now seen that in public access specifier, we can access the members directly using the objects, but private is opposite of that. We cannot directly use these private variables, or you can say private members, with the help of the object. These particular members can only be accessed by the member functions of that particular same class, where these private variables are declared. So we will understand this more clearly when we'll see the code of this particular question, or code of this particular specifier. Now, only the member functions or the friend functions are allowed to access the private data member of the class. So as I have told you that these particular members can only be accessed by the member functions of the same class, or they can be used by the friend functions. Now friend function is the entire different concept. We will have a separate video for the same. So in this video we will see that the private members can only be accessed by the member functions of the same class. So let's just see with the help of an example. See, okay, so here again is a class demo. Now here int radius is declared as private. Earlier in the earlier example it was declared as public, so it can be accessed in the entire program with the help of the object. But here the things will be different. So here radius has been defined as private, and in public we have made a function called float area, where we will return the area of the circle. You can say pi r square is the formula. So now if we'll do the previous thing, like first we'll declare the object. So demo d, this is how the object is declared. Again it is in C++. The syntax may differ in different languages, but you need to focus on the concept. Okay, so demo d. Now when we'll call d dot radius, when we'll assign this radius a value, so d dot radius is equivalent to 9. So once we have assigned this value, in public what was happening, this radius variable was getting 9 as the value, but here the things will be different. So let's just simply run it to understand the difference. Just a second, we can simply run it. Okay, so when we'll be running it, we will get an error. Why we will get an error? Because we cannot access the private variables or private member functions directly with the help of the object. So here is the error. See, demo radius is private within this context. It means that this radius variable is private and we cannot access the private members directly with the help of the objects. How we can access the private variables? We can simply access the private members with the help of the member functions which are present in the same class. So if we want to take radius into account, this variable, if we have to use this radius variable, then we will have to use this particular radius variable only in the member functions defined inside this particular class. And what are the member functions that has been defined inside this class? It is float area. So in this class it is only one member function, but if there are 2 or 3 or multiple member functions which are present in the same class, then those functions also can use the value of this particular private data member. So I hope this thing is clear to you. Now if we have to return the area, then how we can return the area? See, this float area is a function that is public. So it means that when it is public, we can access this particular function with the help of the object. So for calculating the area, what we'll do, we'll simply call the area function. But when we'll call this area function, our answer will be 0. Why 0? Because we do not know what is the value of radius. We have just initialized the radius. So it will give us 0. Now, first we have to assign a particular value to the radius. Then we can calculate the area of the circle. And how we can change the value of radius? We can only change the value of radius inside this member function. So what we'll do, we will pass an argument from our main function, or you can say from the function we are calling this particular function. In that we'll pass, let's suppose, int r. Now we know that inside the member functions we can directly access these private variables. So we will simply do radius is equivalent to the value that we have passed in the argument. Now this radius is equal to r. Now we can simply return radius 3.14 into radius. But when we are calling this function from our main function, that is d dot area, then also we have to pass some value. So earlier I think I have passed 6. So let's just see now if it will run or not. So yes, it will now run, because we are using object, we are directly calling the public functions, and that particular public function is the member function of this particular class demo, and this member function is able to access the radius variable directly. So I hope this thing is clear to you. Okay, so it did not run. Okay, so I think it should not give us any error, and okay, so we are not printing anything, sorry. So cout d dot area, so we should print this particular thing, then only we will get our final answer. So this particular thing should come out with 36 into 3 72108 something the value should be, so 113.04. So I hope the concept of private access specifier is clear to you, that how it is working. Now we'll see the third access specifier, that is the protected access specifier. Okay, now the protected access specifier. Protected access modifier, or you can say specifier, is similar to private access modifier in the sense that it can't be accessed outside of its class unless with the help of a friend class. This definition is similar to that of the private access specifier, but there is a difference. The difference is that the class members declared as protected can be accessed by any subclass, or you can say derived class of that class as well. Now see, what was the private access specifier? The private access specifier was not being allowed to use beyond its own class. So I hope this thing is clear to you. We can only the only way to access the private access specifier was to declare the member functions inside that class only. But protected access specifier is also same as private. It cannot be accessed outside the boundary of its own class. But there is one difference, that it can also be accessed. It can also be accessed inside the subclass. And what is a subclass? Subclass is the child class which inherits some of the member functions, or you can say data members, from the parent class. So if the concept of inheritance is not clear to you, you can watch our previous video, that is 4 pillars of OOPS. Okay, so their main difference between private and protected is that even if we do inheritance, the private member functions or data members cannot be accessed by the subclass. But when it is declared as protected, and then when we'll do inheritance, then the protected members of the parent class can be accessed by the member functions of the child class. So I hope this definition is clear to you. This is the exact definition that you have to tell in the interview so that it will go good. Okay, so I hope the definition is clear to you. Now let's just see the code for the same particular access specifier. So we have defined here a class parent, and in that particular parent class we have an int id, and it has given the protected access specifier. So I hope this thing is clear to you. Now next, what we have done, we have performed the inheritance, that is we have formed a new class child, and we have inherited parent, that is we have publicly inherited parent. Okay, so this is the syntax of how the inheritance takes place in C++. The syntax of inheritance may vary for different languages. It is different in Java, it is different in C++, but main thing here is that you have to focus on the concept rather than on the syntax. Okay, so now we have performed the inheritance. Now inside the class child, what we have, the child class has its own member functions, that is void set id, and another one is void display id. So once we have performed the inheritance, then it means that the child class will inherit the properties, or you can say members, of the parent class. So it means that now this int id, which was declared as protected, can now be accessed by these member functions of the child class. So now the void set id, inside this we have passed in parameter. So this particular id, which was declared as protected in the parent class, can now be accessed inside this child class, inside this function. Now this id value has been set with the value that has been passed here, that is id is equal to sid. Now void display id. So again, this display id is the function of the derived class of the parent class. So, okay, so I hope this thing is clear to you, that this particular function is the function of the derived class. So here also the protected members can be accessed. So here also we can access id by its name only. So I hope this thing is clear to you. But the main difference from private was, once it was declared as private, then then the inheritance has taken place, then it means that this particular id cannot be directly accessed by these two member functions. But in protected, this particular id can directly be accessed by the member functions of the derived class. So I hope this thing is clear to you. So we have performed the inheritance. Now what we'll do, we will simply form the object of the child class. And now what are the total members of child class? There is set id, display id, and again since it is protected, so therefore id will also become the data member of the child class. So now using this object of the child class, we can call these functions, that is set id and display id. Now this set id and display id, I have told you that they can simply access the protected members of the parent class. So these are the values. So here we have assigned id to sid that has been passed as 81. So and once after we have set the value of id, we will use display id to display the value of id. So here the answer should come out to be 81 when we run this particular code. So here answer should be 81. So I hope the entire process of protected is clear to you. Once I will run this particular code and then I will make that thing private, and then I will try to run again. So you will see that now, see here id is equal to 81. So this thing is crystal clear to you that how the protected members are working. So protected access specifiers are only working in case of inheritance. Now what if I will make it private? So instead of protected, I have made it private. Now inheritance is taking place, all the rest of the program remains same, but now we cannot access this particular id inside this derived class. So let's see, because it was declared as private, so it means that since it is declared as private, it can only be accessed inside the scope only, that is inside the class parent only. So now there will be an error that parent id is private within this context. So I hope now the major difference between protected and private is clear to you. Protected is similar to private, but in inheritance their protected members can be directly accessed in the derived class, but in case of private, the private members can, in case of inheritance, cannot be accessed by the derived class. So this was the major difference between the protected and private, and I hope all the three modifiers till now that I have discussed are clear to you. Now see, these three modifiers that I have told you till now are common in all the languages. They are common in C++, Java, Python. Now see, in C++, if we do not tell the access, if we do not assign an access specifier, so by default it becomes private in C++. So this thing is to note that in C++, if we do not provide any access specifier, so by default every function member function that will be declared will be private by default. But in Java the case is different. If we do not assign any of the access specifier to the member functions we are declaring, then by default it will take a default access specifier. So in Java there are 4 types of access specifiers, whereas in C++ there are only 3 types of access specifiers. So this is the default access specifier. This is only used in case of Java. So what is its definition? See, when no access modifier is specified for a class, method or data members, it is said to be having the default access modifier by default. So in C++ by default it is private, but in Java by default it is a default access specifier. Now the data members, class or methods which are not declared using any access modifiers having default access modifiers are accessible only within the same package. So see, what a default access specifier does. See, inside a package there is a concept of package in Java. So inside a package there are lots of classes. So once a member has been declared a default inside a particular class, now that particular member can be accessed by other classes also, despite of inheritance, whether inheritance takes place or not. That particular member can be accessed by other classes of the same package without inheritance also. So this is the entire concept of default modifier. So I hope this thing is clear to you. So guys, this was it for this video. I hope all the 4 access specifiers were clear to you. Thank you for watching this video.